What if the deadliest weapon on American soil wasn't a missile from abroad, but a candy-colored pill made in silence? On a cool May morning in 2025, agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement burst through warehouse doors from Arizona to Oregon. Inside, they didn't find guns or bombs. They found 400 kilograms of fentanyl, poison potent enough to wipe out every man, woman, and child in New York City twice over. The Sinaloa Cartel had brought its war into America's heartland, hiding chemical death behind everyday packaging. This wasn't a street bust, it was a battlefield discovery. The operation was codenamed Iron Veil. Over 5 states, from the dusty border towns of New Mexico to the quiet suburbs of Utah, federal agents executed simultaneous raids in what officials describe as the most significant narcotics seizure in American history. The scale was staggering. Over 3 million fentanyl pills, 80 kilograms of methamphetamine, 7 kilograms of cocaine, and an arsenal of 49 firearms. This was not chaos, it was choreography. Federal teams moved like clockwork, guided by intelligence streams tracing back to Sinaloa's leadership. Reuters confirmed that DEA and ICE intelligence units had spent months infiltrating encrypted communication channels tied to Mexican operatives. Surveillance flights, monitored by Defense Department drones, tracked cross-border shipments disguised as medical supplies. What began as a local investigation in Albuquerque evolved into a national counteroffensive, an operation not just to seize drugs, but to prevent what one official described to BBC News as a potential mass casualty event. The seizure marked a turning point in how Washington now views narcotics. President Donald Trump, speaking from the White House, called it the largest counter-chemical operation in our nation's history. He ordered the Department of Homeland Security to classify high-volume fentanyl networks as chemical warfare threats, elevating drug enforcement to the level of national defense. Analysts from Jane's Defense Weekly compared the strategy to NATO's counter-proliferation doctrines, where preemptive disruption of weapons networks is treated as military necessity. The US is responding to cartels the way it responds to hostile states, a defense news analyst observed, because fentanyl has reached weapon-grade lethality. The implications stretched far beyond America's borders. In Ukraine, similar chemical precursors had surfaced in seized Russian facilities, proof that synthetic toxins can destabilize nations as effectively as bullets. In the Middle East, Israeli and Iranian forces trade accusations of chemical sabotage. Across the Pacific, US-China tensions deepen as Beijing faces allegations of precursor exports to Latin American labs. The global pattern is clear. Synthetic warfare is the new shadow front. But beneath the geopolitical chessboard lies a quieter, grimmer truth. Each pill seized meant another family spared the agony of loss. Hospitals across the US report that overdoses remain the leading cause of death for adults under 45. In the neighborhoods where this poison flowed, children walk past shuttered houses, their parents gone to addiction. America's chemical war is not only about enforcement, it's about survival. If 400 kilograms of synthetic death can cross the border undetected until now, how much more waits in the shadows? And as America tightens its grip on security, how much freedom will it trade to stay alive? Underneath the desert sun of New Mexico, a network of warehouses, suburban homes, and hidden storage units formed the quiet backbone of the Sinaloa Empire. What federal agents uncovered wasn't a random drug ring. It was a logistical masterpiece of chemical warfare. Behind ordinary facades, the cartel had built a pipeline of death stretching from the mountains of Sonora to the streets of Portland. The blueprint resembled a military supply chain, with coded communication, encrypted ledgers, and carefully compartmentalized cells designed to survive infiltration. The investigation focused on 36-year-old Heriberto Salazar Amaya, identified by Reuters as the regional commander for Sinaloa operations inside the United States. His syndicate operated like a corporate division of terror, managing distribution networks, financing systems, and local enforcers. In one Santa Fe suburb, 25-year-old Misael Lopez Rubio stored over 165 kilograms of fentanyl pills in a rented unit, worth nearly $400 million on the black market. Just blocks away, agents found 365,000 pills, heroin, and an arsenal of 24 firearms in another suspect's apartment, where, chillingly, a child was also present.
BBC News described the discovery as industrialized death disguised as commerce. ICE agents, using data from mobile intercepts and financial forensics, traced the cartel's earnings through shell companies registered in Nevada and Oregon. Each layer was built to hide the trail between American distributors and the cartel's financiers in Culiacan. Yet every encrypted message, every transaction pulled investigators closer to the top. What shocked agents most was the sophistication of Sinaloa's chemical operations. According to Jane's Defense Weekly, processing labs uncovered in Albuquerque mirrored the design of military chemical facilities, complete with air filtration, contamination containment, and precision scales for mass production. DEA scientists compared the infrastructure to weapons assembly, where even a milligram miscalculation could mean mass casualty.
The Guardian reported that U.S. intelligence had quietly reclassified parts of the Sinaloa Cartel structure under terrorist-associated entities, aligning with President Trump's 2025 executive order treating major transnational cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. The move unlocked surveillance and financial tools typically reserved for counterterrorism operations.
Experts at DW noted that the cartel's command system mirrors hybrid warfare tactics, non-state actors exploiting civilian infrastructure to deliver strategic damage. The United States, they argued, now faces a dual-front conflict, external enemies testing its borders and internal networks exploiting its freedoms.
Globally, the parallels are striking. In Ukraine, hybrid tactics blur the line between civilian and military targets. In Israel and Iran, cyber attacks blend with chemical sabotage. In the Pacific, Chinese triads and state-linked networks manipulate synthetic production as geopolitical leverage. The Sinaloa model, industrial, invisible, adaptable, is the same formula global powers use to destabilize rivals without open war. Behind these grand strategies are human casualties. In 2024 alone, over 75,000 Americans died from fentanyl overdoses, according to updated CDC data cited by Al Jazeera. That's more than US combat deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. Entire towns from Ohio to Oregon have been hollowed out by addiction. Mothers bury sons who never knew they'd swallowed poison. Police officers carry Narcan like sidearms. And yet, amid the grief, there's a deeper question. When the enemy no longer flies a flag or wears a uniform, how does a nation fight back without losing itself? If America must fight cartels with the same tools it uses against terrorists, will its justice system and its democracy survive the transformation? At dawn on May 8, 2025, the United States moved as one. From Albuquerque to Salem, from Las Vegas to Tucson, black SUVs rolled through the mist in perfect synchronization. Radios crackled. Teams from DEA, ICE, FBI, U.S. Marshals, and local SWAT units executed simultaneous raids under sealed federal warrants. The targets were not random dealers. They were the central nervous system of an international chemical empire. Each location hit within minutes of the others. The coordination, officials told Reuters, mirrored a counter-terrorism strike, not a drug bust. Hazmat teams in full protective gear swept through storage units packed with fentanyl powder, potent enough to trigger mass poisoning with a single misplaced breath. Helicopters hovered low over rooftops as tactical units breached doors. The operation was clinical, silent, and deadly precise. Within hours, 16 high-level suspects were in custody, including Heriberto Salazar Amaya, the cartel's US-based command node.
Federal agents confiscated 400 kilograms of fentanyl, 80 kilograms of methamphetamine, 7.5 kilograms of cocaine, 4.5 kilograms of heroin, and 49 firearms, many of them modified ghost guns without serial numbers. Alongside them lay $610,000 in cash and encrypted phones, each a potential key to unraveling an empire.
Forensic experts from the Defense Department joined DEA chemists to neutralize the stored narcotics safely, treating the sites like biological contamination zones. According to DW, interagency cooperation reached levels unseen since the early post-9/11 Homeland Security reforms. Local departments were briefed only hours before launch to prevent leaks. It was a national security operation disguised as a drug bust, a senior official told The Guardian. One mistake, and entire city blocks could have gone up in toxic smoke.
In Washington, President Donald Trump addressed the nation in a televised statement, calling the operation a counterstrike against the enemies who poison our people. He pledged to extend federal authority for future joint operations, instructing the Pentagon to assist DEA intelligence gathering where cartel routes overlap with military surveillance networks in the Gulf of California and Central America. Strategically, the operation redefined the boundary between law enforcement and national defense. Analysts from Defense News noted that the coordination blueprint mirrored NATO's Joint Task Force protocols, where simultaneous multi-theater actions overwhelm adversaries before they can adapt. The success of Iron Veil demonstrated that domestic defense could function with the speed and precision of military warfare. Meanwhile, international observers drew grim parallels. In Ukraine, drone-based strikes on Russian ammunition depots echoed the same doctrine: hit fast, cut deep, neutralize infrastructure before escalation. In the Middle East, Israel's covert operations against Hezbollah's chemical plants shared the same logic: act preemptively or pay the price later. Across the Pacific, China's cyber narcotics front, as described by BBC News, continues to supply precursor chemicals through shadowed exporters, complicating Washington's effort to shut down supply lines without igniting trade warfare. For communities at home, the success was both relief and revelation. Neighborhoods in New Mexico woke up to sirens and helicopters, but also to the sight of federal agents carrying out crates of deadly pills that might have ended up in local schools. Parents watched, stunned, as armored trucks rolled past playgrounds that only hours earlier had been unwittingly sitting atop a chemical bomb. The cost of such operations, however, extends beyond dollars. Civil liberty advocates interviewed by Al Jazeera warned that the line between national defense and domestic policing is blurring faster than anyone anticipated. Facial recognition warrants, digital surveillance, cross-state jurisdiction, tools built for counter-terrorism are now standard in anti-narcotics raids. The question is not whether America can protect itself, it's whether it can do so without turning inward. How far should a nation go to defend its people when the battlefield is its own backyard? When agents entered the final safe house in Santa Fe, the air smelled faintly of bleach and burned plastic. What they found inside would haunt even the most hardened veterans of the drug wars. In the back bedroom, stacked floor to ceiling, were boxes of blue fentanyl pills stamped to mimic prescription medication. OxyContin, Percocet, Xanax. Nearby, a playpen sat empty. A half-eaten meal and children's drawings littered the table. Beside them, investigators counted 24 loaded firearms, several with switches converting them to automatic fire. This was not a home, it was a war room. According to The Guardian, agents also discovered evidence of the cartel's manufacturing protocols, laminated sheets detailing dosage ratios, packaging standards, and fake pharmaceutical labels. Each document read like an assembly line manual, confirming that the Sinaloa network operated not as smugglers, but as industrial chemists of death. Reuters later reported that some pill presses bore serial numbers linked to machinery imported from Asia, suggesting that the equipment came from the same suppliers accused by Washington of selling fentanyl precursors to Mexico. Among the seizures, investigators found encrypted ledgers recording estimated profits of nearly $1.2 billion, the proceeds of addiction, tragedy, and despair. The numbers weren't abstract. Every line represented lives traded for cash. Federal prosecutors told BBC News that the operation was a mirror of terror finance, where profit margins rival the arms trade. But even amid the violence, there were human faces. During one raid, agents found a 5-year-old child sleeping in a back room beside bags of fentanyl powder. The DW correspondent in New Mexico wrote that the discovery broke even the cold professionalism of the scene,
proof that the human toll of this war is paid by the innocent. Social workers later confirmed that several children had been exposed to toxic dust levels that could have killed them instantly. Across 5 states, similar stories unfolded. In Oregon, neighbors told Al Jazeera they had no idea their quiet cul-de-sac hid one of the largest synthetic drug warehouses in the nation. In Arizona, a young mother collapsed in tears as officers carried her teenage son away, an unwitting courier caught with 20,000 pills in his car trunk. These were not cartel soldiers, but Americans weaponized by addiction and desperation. Federal analysis published by Defense News confirmed that the Sinaloa network had adapted to modern surveillance by using decentralized micro-hubs. Each stash location stored enough fentanyl for millions of lethal doses, but operated independently, ensuring the network's survival even if one cell was compromised. It's the same strategy used by terrorist cells, said a counterterrorism analyst. Redundancy equals resilience. The global parallels grow darker still. In Ukraine, Russia's use of non-traditional warfare, drones, sabotage, chemical threats, mirrors the same asymmetric methods. In Israel, intelligence agencies warned that Iranian proxies are experimenting with fentanyl as a crowd control agent. And in China, trade records show precursor shipments doubling in 2025, despite Beijing's denials of state involvement. The theater changes, but the play is the same. Invisible war waged through chemistry. In Washington, President Donald Trump framed the discovery as proof that America faces enemies who exploit our compassion and our open borders. His administration ordered a national counter-fentanyl task force integrating DEA, ICE, and military intelligence under one command, a controversial move some lawmakers fear grants sweeping power to law enforcement. Yet for many Americans, the images of that Santa Fe house, the toys beside poison, the child beside guns, erase any debate. How many more families must live above unseen arsenals before this becomes more than a policing issue? How many more children must breathe in death before the world admits this is not addiction, but attack? Fentanyl is no longer a drug. It is a weapon. Cheap, portable, and invisible. In Washington's new strategic lexicon, it sits beside cyber attacks and biological warfare as a 21st century threat capable of collapsing societies from within. The BBC called it America's chemical war at home. The DW editorial board warned, if a nation's young are dying faster than it can protect them, it no longer needs foreign enemies. The numbers alone reveal the devastation. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 75,000 Americans died from fentanyl overdoses last year. More than died in Vietnam in 2 decades of war. Analysts at Reuters estimate that the 400 kilograms seized in Operation Iron Veil contained enough lethal doses to kill 200 million people. 2 milligrams, the weight of a snowflake, can stop a human heart. Multiply that by billions and you have a new kind of Armageddon, one that fits inside a suitcase. President Donald Trump, speaking at the DEA headquarters in Arlington, declared the fentanyl crisis a chemical attack on the American people. His directive authorized federal agencies to treat major cartel hubs as terrorist-controlled zones, giving the Pentagon authority to provide aerial surveillance, electronic warfare assistance, and cross-border tracking. We will hunt them as we hunt terrorists, Trump said. No sanctuary for those who kill our children. The policy shift stunned international observers. Defense News noted that the integration of military-grade intelligence into domestic operations marked the largest realignment of Homeland Defense since 2001. Yet, behind the applause, questions simmered. The Guardian cautioned that empowering law enforcement with wartime tools risks eroding civil liberties, creating an America perpetually at war with itself. Where does policing end and occupation begin? Globally, the pattern echoes across continents. In Ukraine, defense analysts at Jane's report that Russian forces have experimented with synthetic agents in battlefield sabotage. In the Middle East, Israeli and Iranian scientists race to develop chemical neutralizers against weaponized opioids. And in Asia, Al Jazeera cites growing Western intelligence linking Chinese precursor exports to cartel labs in Latin America. a new front in the silent arms race. The crisis exposes an uncomfortable truth. The balance between security and freedom is narrowing. Every step toward protection risks tightening the grip of surveillance. Federal data tracking programs now scan pharmaceutical imports, parcel shipments, and digital payments. Civil rights groups warn that such measures, though necessary, carry the seeds of a surveillance state. But for the families who've lost loved ones, the trade-off feels justified. In the Rust Belt towns of Ohio, crosses line the roadsides. In Oregon, morgues operate beyond capacity. Teachers now carry Narcan. Police officers wear gloves to avoid accidental contact. The nation's front line no longer lies overseas. It runs through its neighborhoods, schools, and homes. The question is no longer whether America can win the war against fentanyl, but whether it can win without losing the very liberties it seeks to defend. Can a free nation fight an invisible enemy without becoming what it fears most? A fortress built on fear? And as this new doctrine takes root, what happens when other nations, facing their own chemical crises, decide to follow America's lead? The arrests came swiftly, but the shockwaves lingered. 16 defendants, all tied to the Sinaloa Cartel's U.S. network, now face life sentences under federal anti-terrorism statutes. Prosecutors told Reuters that each kilogram of seized fentanyl equals hundreds of thousands of lives spared. The courtroom scenes were chilling. The accused stood silent as evidence was read. Encrypted ledgers, weapons, cash, and photographs of the pills that could have erased cities. Yet for investigators, this was not the end. It was proof that chemical warfare no longer belongs to governments alone. In Washington, President Donald Trump hailed Operation Iron Veil as a victory for every American family. He announced a new Continental Shield initiative, expanding the authority of the DEA, ICE, and Homeland Security to combat what he described as foreign-backed networks of chemical terrorism. International reaction was divided. BBC News reported cautious praise from NATO allies, who viewed the strategy as a model for transnational defense. Meanwhile, The Guardian questioned the precedent. Could treating cartels as terrorists lead to endless warfare without borders or oversight? Domestically, the images of the bust galvanized a frightened nation. Across social media, Americans shared photographs of blue counterfeit pills beside coins for scale, a haunting reminder of how small death can be. In communities from Tucson to Toledo, parents attended town halls demanding tougher border controls, stricter penalties, and international sanctions against precursor suppliers. Federal polls showed a surge of public support for expanded operations, even as civil rights groups warned that unchecked power could erode constitutional freedoms. Strategically, the operation reshaped how the West views internal defense. Analysts at Jane's Defense Weekly called the fentanyl war the template for countering non-state chemical threats. Just as NATO redefined warfare after Crimea, America is redefining defense after Albuquerque. The DW Berlin desk noted that Germany, facing its own rise in synthetic trafficking through Eastern Europe, is studying the DEA's tactics to craft EU-wide coordination models. Defense News added that Washington's success forced rival powers, especially China and Russia, to reassess the global narcotics trade as an instrument of influence. The echoes reach beyond borders. In Ukraine, commanders fighting near Kharkiv described fentanyl-laced morphine packets seized from Russian troops. Proof that the line between medication and weapon is fading. In the Middle East, Al Jazeera reported Israeli raids uncovering Iranian research into psychoactive compounds for battlefield use. Everywhere, chemistry is becoming the new currency of power. And beneath it all, the human cost persists. Every statistic hides a name. A son who didn't wake up, a mother who couldn't save him, a child left to navigate a world that weaponized compassion into addiction. One Albuquerque paramedic told The Guardian, "We used to fight to keep people alive. Now we fight just to keep up." The moral fatigue of a nation at war with itself is palpable. But amid the darkness, Operation Iron Veil stands as a rare victory. A moment where coordination, intelligence, and courage aligned to stop a catastrophe before it began. It exposed a chilling truth. The next war might not start with explosions, but with powder, precision, and profit.
As the world watches, one question remains. If America has turned its war on drugs into a war for survival, how long before the rest of the world must do the same? And will the defense of freedom demand the surrender of innocence? Operation Iron Veil marked the largest fentanyl seizure in U.S. history. 400 kilograms of synthetic poison capable of killing 200 million people. Coordinated across 5 states, it revealed a vast Sinaloa Cartel network that transformed narcotics into chemical warfare. Under President Donald Trump, the U.S. reclassified major cartels as terrorist organizations, empowering agencies like DEA, ICE, and the Pentagon to act with military precision. The operation's success demonstrated America's ability to mobilize domestically as if facing a foreign enemy, redefining national defense for a new era of invisible threats. Globally, the crisis mirrors growing hybrid conflicts. From chemical sabotage in Ukraine to precursor exports in China and Iran's covert laboratories. Experts warn that the world is entering an age where chemistry, not missiles, define strategic dominance. Yet, amid policy debates and global rivalries, the real battle remains human. Families shattered, cities mourning, and a nation balancing liberty with survival. Can any democracy remain free when its enemies no longer wear uniforms, but sell death disguised as medicine?